Guys, it is already November. It is November 5th, Thursday to be exact, which means that the holiday season is practically upon us, and this dumpster fire of a year is almost over. Can you believe it? This is Teal Talk, and I am your host, Jenny Guy. I'm Mediavine's Director of Marketing, and I have a very important and seasonal question for you. Where do you fall on the Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah scale? Have you already decorated? Are you listening to the music already? Are the Hallmark movies on repeat like they are for some of the Mediavine teams? Say hi to us in the comments, weigh in, tell us where you fall, because it is a super important and polarizing topic. I personally am of the opinion that whatever you want to do in 2020 is perfectly valid. If you want to do Christmas before Halloween, yes, do that. If you want St. Patrick's Day in November, fantastic. If it provides you and yours with a modicum of joy this year, I say just go for it. I'm also in favor of normalizing full celebrations for random holidays. So in that spirit, I would like to say Happy Men Make Dinner Day. Did anyone know that was a thing? Because it is. I did research on all the random holidays. Today is Happy Men Make Dinner Day. Yes, it's a thing. We're going to share the link in the comments. It is the first Thursday in November, and there are rules. And to make things more inclusive, I'd like to change it from men to whichever partner doesn't normally cook. And if you normally cook for yourself, order from a locally owned restaurant. I don't know, just celebrate your life. Have a great Thursday. That's what we're here for. I know I'm celebrating today because one, we don't have to talk about anything that's happening in our nation for an hour. My guest and I are just talking about that, but I'm very much celebrating because my returning guest is the wonderful Nonterah. She shared so much good stuff during your Summer of Live episode on repurposing content, and we kept having to rush through certain topics, and we didn't have time. And we kept saying, we'll talk more about that later. And she was kind enough to come back and talk about the concept of story selling and email marketing, which we will go into more in a second. But hello, G. Welcome back.
Hi. I'm so excited to be back.
I'm so excited to have you because you're awesome. I'm going to read her bio because she is an impressive lady. She is a former registered nurse and medical scientist turned blogger, freelance writer, and YouTube creator. She is the host of the Create and Prosper show, which helps bloggers and writers create amazing content and build profitable businesses. She started My Online Biz Journey in 2014 to chronicle her journey into online business and succeeded in using that blog to attract clients for a social media content creation business. You can find her currently on gnonterah.com, where she's passionately helping her audience make a living and build a powerful and authentic personal brand with their writing. When she's not creating amazing content, she likes to watch spy movies. What up? All right, G, hello. I'm going to start out with a question for our audience. Tell us, all of our content creators out there in the audience, do you consider yourself salespeople? Easy question. Do you consider yourself a salesperson in addition to being a content creator? Put that in there. G, welcome back. Thank you for coming. You are a wonderful breath of fresh air during this week and year. Let's take it from the top. What the heck is story selling? Tell us about it.
Okay, so I want you to think about your favorite movie. I want you to think about your favorite movie. So I'll give you like 30 seconds. Think about, you told me earlier on that you were in theater. So think about your favorite play or movie.
Okay. All right.
Minute.
Got it.
Less than that. Okay.
All right.
But
got it.
When you think about your favorite movie or play or even music video, each of these always tells you some kind of story. And if you're being honest with yourself, even when you were in school, right, the lessons that stuck out to you, the teachers that stuck out to you were the ones not just dispensing information, but the ones who were always telling all these incredible, crazy, funny stories, okay? Even if it was morbid stories, you'd be like, wow, I had a professor who always told these morbid stories.
And you're talking about that person in the lunchroom because they're making an impact on you for sure.
For sure. So as human beings, we have been using storytelling to communicate with one another for centuries, for years and thousands of years, right? And so storytelling is just something that our brains are used to. We love that, we gravitate towards that. So then when we start to talk about story selling, right? And when I asked you to think about your favorite movie, you probably did not have to think that hard, right? It just came on, and you probably would be able to tell me everything that happens in that movie with accuracy, right? Because that's how well our brains are wired to store stories. And there's research to prove this, by the way. So when we talk about story selling, we're talking about using the power of story and the power of the elements of story, and we'll talk about that too, to sell. And it's important for any content creator, and I know there's so many bloggers or YouTube creators, podcasters that listen to this show. It's important to incorporate that into your selling strategies, into your brand building strategies, because that's how, remember, I told you, you remember the stories, right? You remember the teacher or that person that's always telling you the weird stories, right? This is how you are going to gain mind share in the minds of people, when you incorporate those elements of story into your brand and into your selling process.
I'm obsessed, and I'm going to take 2 seconds to combine the two elements that you just told. My mentor in grad school, shout out Amy Herzberg, she's probably not watching, but she always used to say in our training as actors that people do not change behavior based on facts. People change behavior based on feelings. So while you're trying to get someone to quit smoking and you're reading all of the facts, people know the facts. They get the facts. They don't change the behavior until they become emotionally invested in this process. So that goes right along with that. I love it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Can you give us some famous examples of the story selling beyond just the beyond our favorite movies, which we're all now thinking of, and how do you use story selling in your own business?
Okay, so I'll start with answering the question, how do I use story selling in my own business? So I used to have this ebook on how to become a social media manager, and I sold a few thousand dollars worth of those copies because of a simple story. And here was the story. The story was that I had moved from the East Coast of the US to the West Coast. Anybody who has ever made that move knows how expensive the West Coast is, and especially if you live in a place like San Diego. And so when we moved from Philadelphia to San Diego, we immediately realized, so I'm telling you the story, okay? We immediately realized how expensive San Diego was. And then since I had been blogging for about a year, I leveraged my blog and used that to land my first clients as a social media manager.
Love that.
3 months later, I was making $1,200 extra from my social media management business. And that allowed us to keep on paying our bills and enjoy the city we had just moved into. That's the story I told to sell the ebook. Now, why is that powerful? That's powerful because I share, so in this case, and in every story, and I'm sure you know this, in every story, there's a hero, right? And the hero in the story faces a dilemma. They face some kind of problem.
Yep.
And then they are on a journey to solve that problem. And in that journey, they find a solution, and ultimately that dilemma is resolved by the end of the story. So what was the dilemma I faced? The dilemma I faced is I had moved from one city to the next. It was 2 or 3 times more expensive.
Yeah.
And I had to find a solution, right? The solution was starting my own freelance business. And in about 3 months, I was making over $1,000 per month managing other people's social media for them. So why is this important? Now, if I had just ended the story, with myself, the people would be like, okay, well, that's cool, but how does that
for you?
Me?
Right.
So then I moved on. And so I used this in my copy when I was writing the sales page for the ebook. I moved on to say, maybe you found yourself in a place where you need to make a few extra $1,000 a month, or you just even need an extra $500 a month so that you can pay for childcare. Social media management is a great way for you to do that. And here's an ebook that shows you this and this and that to do to establish your own social media management business in 30 days. And it worked. That page converted. I forget now because I stopped selling that book. But I think the first day I sent the email, I converted at maybe 5 to 10%.
That's great.
Wow. And most of the time, for those of us who are watching this and who may or may not know, when you send out emails, usually the industry standard of conversion is like 2%.
Yeah.
So conversion means getting somebody from not buying, from reading the page to buying. And so the people that bought, that was my conversion rate. And I was super excited about that. And so the power of, that's how I've used story selling in my business to sell an example, this example here, but some really famous examples that I can also think about. I want to think about even somebody that's also in the online entrepreneur space that I immediately clicked with when I heard his story. So I'm sure if you're a blogger or if you've been online for any amount of time, you probably know about Pat Flynn. And back in 2012, I discovered Pat Flynn because I read his story about how he was let go from his job, and how in 2008. And we were all here in 2008. We know what happened.
Oh yeah.
People were losing their jobs left and right. The market was crashing. Unfortunately, people were even committing suicide because of that. I remember it was a really dire time. The housing market was crazy. Everything was crazy. And this is when he lost his job. And he talked about the fact that ended up being a blessing in disguise, because then it allowed him to start blogging and build his business. So when I read that story, I was like, wow, that's such an incredible story. And so at that time on his blog, he used to have a little snippet. The introduction was, I'm not a millionaire yet, but I'm the crash test dummy of the internet. And I will tell you about what I'm doing to make money online. I'm like, tell me, brother, tell me.
Yes.
So he used his story, something that had happened to him personally, to set the premise for, hey, this really bad thing happened to me, but here's how I'm pulling through, and I'm pulling you along with me. And I'm still a Pat Flynn fan, after almost a decade, because of that story. So these are just two examples of how your story can become the springboard for convincing people why they should buy from you, why they should follow you, why they should read your blog, all that.
I love it. And it sounded very, while it was emotional and it was compelling and it was vulnerable for both you and Pat to discuss, your own money problems or your own what might be viewed objectively or subjectively, both, as failure, if you wanted to classify it like that. But you're making that vulnerability open to other people. And then you're not only doing that, you're then systematically tying it into other people. So that becomes part of it too. It's not enough, like you said, to just say, I failed, period.
Nobody
and
did.
Then, right. Correct. No one cares. Yes. Thank you. Good. It's true. I mean, why? No.
I don't want to be mean about it. It's
not mean. It's the truth.
It's the truth. Most people are thinking about their own problems. So they're not necessarily going to, they may sympathize and empathize, but they also have stuff going on. So it really has to, at the end of the day, the story really has to tie in strongly into why it matters for the person you're trying to sell to.
I love that. All right. So now that we understand what story selling is, how can our audience incorporate and implement this strategy in their own business? How do they tell their own story? How do they use how do you use personal stories to sell? Right. So there are two prongs to this, and I want to talk about that. So Fantastic. Remember how we just said that you always have to think about how it relates to the other person. I think in order to be a really good storyteller for your specific business, you do have to know the audience you're speaking to. You do have to know them. So this is where kind of, I'm not the best person to ask about when it comes to choosing an avatar or all that. But this is where you really have to think about the people that you serve or the people that you're going to sell to, right? And selling is a service. I always see selling as a service and not as come buy my stuff, right? And so you have to think about the people you're trying to sell, you're trying to serve, and think, what are their problems? What are their fears? What bothers them? Okay, because when you're able to figure that out, you're able to pick up on the language they use. So for instance, one day I was working on something else, and I kind of jumped into a Facebook group, and I knew that these people, it was a group of women, and I knew that these individuals would be
would fall into that demographic I was trying to reach. So I asked them a question about, and it was about writing books. And so, because I talk about writing a lot. And so I asked them, what's stopping you from writing your first book? What, because I know a lot of people want to write books, but I just wanted to hear what they had to say. Yep. And I got about 10 responses of people telling me in their own words why they hadn't finished their book or why they hadn't started. And I ended up using that in some copy somewhere. So in the first part of really figuring out how to use your story to sell is to figure out what your clients, ideal clients, customers, readers, whatever, listeners, what are their problems? What are their issues? What are they looking for? What are their aspirations? Once you have that down, then I want you to think about a story that can connect to that. So if your audience is mostly 25-year-old Gen Zers, I think they're Gen Zers, but anyway.
They are Gen Z, I think, yeah.
They are Gen Z, right? So it's 25-year-old women who have or let's say 22-year-old women who just graduated from college. A lot of these women went to college in the time of COVID, okay? Yep. They just graduated from college. The language they use is completely different from somebody like me that graduated from college, I don't know, almost 15 years ago. It's going to be very different, right? So learning that language is important. And then finding a story that fits that. So because I knew my audience was around my age, they were mostly working women that were trying to find a side hustle. I was like, oh, okay. They're working women that want to have a side hustle. I'm a working woman who has a side hustle in social media management. But why was that side hustle important? Why are they trying to find a side hustle? Because maybe
they have a problem.
Yes, there's a problem they have. The reason they're trying to find a side hustle, maybe they're underpaid at their jobs. Maybe at this point in their lives, they have other responsibilities that don't make it possible for them to take on a second job. Yep. And so I have to be able to identify all of those. And then when I tell my story, link it to those narratives that are going on in their heads. And for them to say, yes, how does she know? We're in the same boat. Of course. I want to get this. Of course. So I really do think that the way you begin to story sell is figure out what the needs are of your audience. Then figure out a story that relates. If I tell the same story of coming to San Diego, and then starting a side hustle of a job of a social media management business, to individuals who are trying to start up a tech business, it would make absolutely no sense, because that they don't even like I'm trying to start my own tech startup. I don't care about side hustles. So knowing that will help you choose the stories. And so if I was, so good example, but if I was going to talk to the tech startup people, I would choose a completely different story.
Yep. Okay. I want to go back a little bit. You have an amazing way of doing this. You find these little tidbits that I just want to go back and hear more about, because I think the reason why I asked this, and the audience hasn't responded, but it's a thing that I think a lot of content creators struggle with, is the idea of being a salesperson and embracing that and not feeling really icky about it. I feel like a lot of them are we're amazing at building these relationships with our audience. We're amazing at connecting with them, being vulnerable, speaking their language, having them want to consume the content. But then when we get to the point of it's time to sell, or it's time to ask them to convert or do anything like that, it becomes uncomfortable, awkward. It feels like it's too much. It feels gross. But when you just described, you think of selling as a service, I think that's a huge mind shift that I would love to hear more about from you.
Okay. Yeah. I think of selling as a service because, I always think of it in terms of pain. When I was having my son, I was in a world of pain at the hospital, and as millions of women go through every single year. And when the physicians came in and were like, "Do you want an epidural?" I was like, "Yes, I do. I don't care what it costs. Just give it to me." Okay.
Yep.
So I know that's an extreme example, but so at that point, I wasn't even thinking about cost. I was thinking, I want to be out of this pain. Where is
the problem now?
Right. So you are going to, most of the time, and not all of the people in your audience are going to be at this point. There is a section of your audience that is at a point where they badly need a solution to their problem and they don't know where to get it, but you have it. And if you have it, then I think it's a disservice to them to make them continue to suffer when you have a solution. Because at that point, most of the time I found, and I've charged people. I have different packages of things that because I coach people as well, and I've had people that I've had up to $700 coaching sessions with for a few hours, and they didn't wink at the price. They didn't say, "Can I get a discount?" or anything like that, because at that point they needed my $700 service, right?
Yep.
They needed it badly. They were chasing me down for it. I wasn't even asking them for it, but they knew I could solve their problem for them. And so they said, "I want you to help me and I'll pay whatever you say."
They're looking at it as an investment to get their thing solved. Right.
And we went through that coaching session. She got what she needed, and she keeps on sending me messages to say thank you, right? So here's the deal. At some point, even if you have 1 million followers right now, at some point there's a section of your audience that has the specific pain problem that you solve that need a solution now. You have the solution, but you can't just give away that solution for free, because we're in a business. We're not always giving charity, right? So we're in a business. so now it's our turn to help those people by offering them that ebook, by offering them that coaching, by offering them, whatever it is that you sell, right? So that's how I think of it, is at some point somebody is in dire pain. They will pay whatever it takes, and I don't want you to also abuse that, because that can also be abused when you know that there are people that really need what you have. And so you're going to like nickel and dime them. All right. But yeah, absolutely. But you do have that. And Amber is saying in the comments, this reminds me of something said to me offline. You have a moral responsibility that, yes, exactly. There are people that need you. And when you don't, and you see, I want to speak to the people that are kind of afraid to sell, because I know I used to be like this. And to be honest, there are times when I still have some kind of fear in my heart about putting out my prices and that and all that. And I think that's sharing that. Yeah, and I think that's just a normal human response. When you think about it, you're like, I don't know, I just want to give this ebook. Like, if you leave me alone, I'll give things to people for free. But my husband always scolds me about that. So I do think that because you have that moral responsibility, because you're running a business, it is your moral responsibility to serve those people. And so when you move away from slimy salesperson mode to, I really want to help these people solve a problem, it becomes much easier to sell. So it really is a mindset shift.
Yeah.
And you would have to do the work for that, but it is a mindset shift.
Okay. So yes, it's a total mindset shift. It is a game changer, because you are solving those problems. You're not forcing anyone to do this, and they're consuming your content for free at this point by being there. So offering them your solution is not a bad thing at all. So how you mentioned you have to find out what it is that your audience wants. Okay. You asked a group of women about writing. How do you find out what your audience wants?
Right. If most of the time, I've also overcomplicated this part of it. Don't do that. Just ask. There are people on your email list. Likely, we're going to talk about email marketing. There are people on your email list. There are people in your Facebook group. There are people who like you on Instagram. There are people that follow you on Twitter. Even if they're just 10 people, ask them. Okay. Ask them. Just put the question out there. And as your audience grows, ask the question again, because the people that saw the question 6 months ago are not the same people seeing the question now. Ask again, what would you like me to create? So I have a YouTube channel, and one question I ask on that YouTube channel pretty frequently is, hey, I want to make sure I'm creating the best content for you guys. What do you want me to create? Recently, I put out a question like that about 3 mini courses. I was working on some mini courses. I asked them, what do you want me to create? I had 2 people respond, but those 2 people gave me some incredible answers. So don't be afraid about the volume of responses. Just care about the response that you do get. And when you get that response, respect that, thank them for that. Another way you can also get to know what these people want is, I have actually gotten on the phone with people in my audience.
Oh, so, really? What?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Whoa.
So I called them and I spoke to like maybe 4 or 5 people. It was such interesting conversations.
Yeah.
You don't have to use your phone though. You could use Zoom. You could use Skype. Because people do get creepy and try to call you and text you. So I wouldn't say do what I did, but use Zoom or Skype and just invite people. You're like, hey, I have some time this week. I have 1 hour. I'd love to talk to some of you. Here's a scheduling form, right? Here's a scheduling form. Just click on this to schedule a 15-minute call with me, right? So people can do that. And then you get on Zoom with them. And you can do this every quarter. You can do this every 1 month, whatever schedule you choose, okay? And then I'm like, hey, what's going on? Hi. We just do the little pleasantries. And I remember one question I asked somebody was, why do you follow me? And she gave such a great answer. She told me, I bookmark all your emails. I delete most emails, but I bookmark yours because you're the only person that gives, I've forgotten exactly what she said. She said you're the only one that actually gives like advice that I would have to pay for somewhere else. And that was telling, because that also meant I wasn't serving them well by selling. But
you're giving it away.
Yeah, but by speaking to her for 20 minutes, I was able to listen to the words she was using. What words was she using over and over again? Sometimes you use a word in your little niche, and you think everybody knows it. No, they don't. So, for instance, I want to think about a good example. Let's say, okay, so this is my iPhone 7. Oh. The new iPhone 12 has features that are almost with the camera that allows you to have that bokeh effect at the pictures are really great.
Yeah.
If I was a photographer and I was selling a course, I could say, okay, well, this is how you get depth of field. This is how you get, and people can be like, what's that? That's a technical term, right? So most of the time we're using technical terms. You may even be using side hustle, and people are like, what's a side hustle?
I don't know what that means.
Yeah. I talk about freelance writing. One day somebody wrote to me and like, what's freelance writing? So there are people, you're here using all these technical words, and you don't know that they're using completely different language. So by speaking to them, I get to learn what language they're using. Maybe they're saying, I want to start a business on the side instead of side hustle. Or they're saying, I just want some extra income. Or they're just saying, I just like some extra dough. Like whatever language your audience is using is what you need to be incorporating into your content creation process, which you're going to incorporate storytelling into that. So that's another way. Your email list, your social media pages, actually inviting people to speak with you is another way. Then the last way that I'll share is to go to a website called Quora.com. So Quora, it's Quora. It's a question and answer website. And I recently have gotten hooked on it a bit. And the reason being, there are all these people that are asking questions in the subject area that I talk about that I didn't realize people didn't know anything about. So they'll very, very basic questions because when you, I think there's this there's this idea of the curse of knowledge, that the more you know, you forget what it was like to be a beginner, right?
Yep.
So if you forget what it's like to be a beginner, how can you speak to beginners? So I go there to see what beginners are asking so that I can also use that language. So all of these are ways to really tap into what your audience may be thinking and asking.
There's also a certain aspect of the fact that if you're really good at it, it comes so naturally to you that you don't think about the things that people don't know. From the very, like you said, so talking to someone and connecting is great. Another point that I thought about while you were talking about asking your audience, just asking and not being afraid to do it every quarter, every 6 months. Not only are the same people not necessarily going to answer you, your needs change. I don't need the same thing. Talking about 2020 specifically, my needs are not what they were in February of 2020 to March. There's a real big seismic shift in what I needed when I went online. I think anyone out there who bakes sourdough bread can speak to this very firmly. Like, the sourdough starter industry boomed because we were all stuck at home. And that's an extreme example. But the truth is, people's needs change, and you might not be addressing them anymore if you're not checking in on those needs. I love all that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Going back to what you were saying about, we talked about this over the summer. One of my favorite concepts of yours is superfans. Talk to us about superfans and how we can use story selling to create some of those, because I think there aren't many content creators out there who wouldn't want one, or many superfans.
Yeah. So the whole idea of superfans, I borrowed that from Pathfinder too, by the way. He has
one.
Yeah, I know.
He said, what is he? He's the crash test dummy?
Yeah, he used to have that, but he doesn't have that on his website anymore. I just happen to be a big fan of his, and he lives in San Diego. So
have you met him?
Yes, I have. So it's fun. I try not to fangirl, but one of the books he recently wrote was Superfans, and there are a lot of lessons to be learned in that book. And I think if that's not a book you've read as a blogger, content creator, I think you should read it. Okay, so one of the ideas is what I've already shared, and that's pretty standard in a lot of marketing material. Like, find out what your avatar, your ideal client wants or needs by speaking to them, by asking questions, all of that, right? Then the next step you want to do, the next thing you want to do is what you want to make people feel like they belong. You want to make them feel like they're part of a community, like they're insiders, right? And there's so many ways to do this. So once you've found out what their language is, and you begin to write or create content that speaks to that, and begin to use stories that speak to that, there are people that are going to begin to gravitate towards you. But they're not like your inner fans yet. They're like, okay, I think I like this girl. I think I like this guy. Okay, I'm gonna stick around.
But they've swiped right on you now. If you're on Tinder, they've swiped right on you, but they've not. You're not on a date yet.
Right. You're not on a date yet. Exactly. Right. So it's like, okay, I see you. But then there's a point that comes where that individual becomes, I don't care what you create as long as you create it. And I've had people, and I'm not saying any of these things to brag. I'm just saying it's something that all of us can do, right? Because my background is not in content creation. My background is in science, right? So I also had to learn all of this stuff. And so if I've learned it and it's worked for me, I know it's going to work for you too, right? So here's the deal. You want them to feel like they're insiders. So as they come close and you start giving them content that gives them small wins. Let's say, for instance, I had this video on YouTube about how to become a freelance writer. And I gave a really quick tip in that video. I'm like, do this right now. So somebody did that, and then they were like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Like, I did this, and then I got this result. And all of a sudden, that person was like, wanted to be my best friend.
Right? They trust you. You showed them.
Because I had given them some sort of quick win, which triggers something in their brain. Like, oh, if I can get this quick win from just listening to this 5-minute video, then what else can she do for me? Right. So give them quick wins. So as you learn what they need, give people quick tips that will help them do things and then give them a quick win. And then as they're in that excited mode, you want to start to bring them close. And in doing that, one of the things you can do is by creating events. So an event doesn't, these days we don't get to go to actual events, so you can create online events. We're having an online event right now. I'm pretty sure there's some super fans of Mediavine who will watch almost every live of Mediavine, or at least most of them, or will watch the replays and will share them and will defend you if anybody ever tries to badmouth you, right? That's super fan status. And you want that because, you don't want sycophantic fans, but you do want people that love you so much that when they meet somebody else who has a similar problem, they're like, oh, you should check out this person.
Yep.
You must go follow this other person. Okay, so give them small wins, make them feel like they belong by creating events. So one thing I'm doing personally in my own, with my own brand currently is I'm a writer. I talk about writing. So in this season, the NaNoWriMo is going on, which is the National Novel Writing Month. It's a month where authors all over the world will set aside time to write a 50,000 word book. Now, I'm not writing a 50,000 word book, but because I know that there are people in my audience who want to write books, but who have not overcome the fear of writing a book or think it's such a tall order that they cannot do it.
Yep.
I go live every morning from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. and we write our book together.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we go. So I started announcing that somewhere mid-October. I'm like, hey guys, I know so many of you in this community want to write books. I'm gonna go live. You and I, we're gonna write a book together. And so now you can build a community around that. And you're like, and I have people like, people waiting to join the live. And they're in there like, hey, see, hi again. Today was day 4. But I'm already seeing people who are showing up every day, people who are, and usually at the end of the 1 hour of the Write With Me session, I tell them my word count. And so I'm like, hey, okay, today I wrote 1,000 words. And somebody's like, I wrote 600, I wrote 500. And people are sending it in even after the live has gone off air. So building that community of people who we want to write books. And now I'm giving them an avenue for all of us to connect with an online event is really powerful. So that's what you can do with building. That's how you can begin to build super fans, is give them, of course, you learn about them, give them quick wins, make them insiders, start to create a community around that subject. And as you begin to create that community, eventually what you'll begin to notice is that the people within the community begin to talk amongst themselves. They're not even talking to you anymore. They're talking, you brought them together. You were like the matchmaker that put them together. Yeah. And at that point, it's like, yes, you've won. But you really can build people that absolutely love your work, that become super fans, that will follow you onto every platform simply by following these rules of knowing them, talking to them, giving them quick wins, then building a community around the subject that you have chosen.
And so much so, I would say even more now, because people can't connect in other ways. The creating a space for people with shared goals or wants, values, whatever it is, that people can come into a place and actually feel connected. It's huge. Absolutely. It's what we all want right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's take it. So you've talked a little bit about how you're creating. What platform are you going live on? Because we've talked about how we can sell via our blog with our writing, but how are you making this? Can you give us some platform specific examples on how to use story selling on your different platforms beyond just the blog, beyond just writing?
Right. I think of course, as bloggers, right, your first point of storytelling would be through your blog. But I also think a platform like Instagram is really great for storytelling, just because Instagram is very visual, and they've also kind of, I don't know if stolen is the word, but they've also kind of borrowed features from a lot of popular platforms, because the stories idea was originally on Snapchat. They now have Reels, which was originally on TikTok. And so they have all these features that you on Instagram and it's really versatile, that you can use to tell different stories, right? About what's going on. And so about what's going on with you. So I think that for bloggers, Instagram, and you don't have to use Instagram. I'm just using this as an example because I use it and I've seen others use it powerfully for storytelling. And the idea there is to have a compelling image, okay, and then to write a caption, and you would use the same rules you would use when you're writing your blog post, with opening strongly, right? So have a very strong opening too, because the way you're going to get people to read the rest of your blog post is when your title and your opening are powerful. And so it's the same idea. You're going to open powerfully with your first sentence. And so a story I tell, I've told one story about how I moved to San Diego and all that. But I remember recently I was telling a story about 2020. It's a post. It's a post on, and I'll read it because
tragedy, obviously.
That ended up being one of my most engaged posts during that month. And yes, definitely allows me. I'm just pulling it up because I want to read exactly what I said.
You're good.
Yeah. So I have a picture of me and my son, and I took that picture at a really low point in my life. This was the beginning of 2019. I really had a really low moment. I was depressed, and I had bought a new camera. So I told my husband to go out with me and my son and to take a picture of us. I just wanted to kind of like do something that didn't keep me at home, right? So I was really in a sad place. And I took this picture with my son sitting and we're kind of hugging. So that's already kind of like a melancholic picture a bit. It's like you're sitting on a bench hugging your child and you're kind of looking away from the camera. So compelling picture. Okay, that's the first thing. Then I wrote, honest moment, this year I haven't posted a lot on Instagram because everything I am doing seems pointless in light of the heavier issues in the world right now. We've dealt with COVID, Black Lives Matter, we're in election year. And at that time, when I was writing this, there was also something going on with Nigeria. And I'm from West Africa originally. So, and I'm not from Nigeria, but it also affects me because it's in the sub-region. And I said, I cry at least once a week over one issue or the other. And as a sensitive introvert, I do think everything I'm doing seems pointless. Then I go, because I knew that this was something people were feeling, because that's what I was hearing. And I also felt the same way. So I posted that. But then I changed the tone of the story a little bit. And I just say, but is my business pointless though? Are the books I'm writing pointless? They are not. A lot of us are feeling a lot right now: anger, disappointment, disbelief, wondering how much more can anybody take this year? And how can you even think properly about your business at a time like this? It's hard, I'll admit it. But I also want you to realize that your work does matter. And it's okay to promote your product, to continue to sell and serve. It's all right to tell people to watch your videos and read your posts and listen to your podcasts. Because in some way, and I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional again, but in some way, I do see this as activism. When you continue to do the work that you're doing, I do see it, sorry. Nope. I do see it as some kind of activism, because I do realize that when you have money, that's when you can donate to causes that matter to you. When you have the money, that's when you can influence certain decisions, even in your own little way. When you have the money, that's when you can change people's lives. So it's okay that in a year that has required so much of us, that you still can sell. It's okay because you are serving. And when you have that money from what you have sold, then you can put it towards things that mean a lot to you. And I got a lot of feedback on that. So the reason why I think Instagram is powerful for that is because you can make posts like this that are there for a long time and really speak to something that a lot of people are feeling but don't have the words to articulate, right? And but then be able to say it's okay that in 2020 that you can sell. It's okay. But this is how we can reframe it maybe and make it about when we have the money, we can do things that matter. So I share that because of the question that you asked. And sorry, I got emotional. But then another thing that you can do is to.
Don't you dare apologize for getting emotional. I wasn't talking because I was emotional. So
yeah. You can also use Instagram stories. I like to use Instagram stories to kind of bring people throughout my day. Like today, I realized that I had made a mistake on my calendar. And so I shared that in my stories. And I'm like, hey guys, today, guess what? I goofed up and I overbooked myself. But it's gonna be great, you know. And then I take them along, and I'm sharing my journey of writing this book that I'm writing with my audience with them. I'm telling them, hey, come join us and let's write this book together. So there's so many elements of Instagram, for instance, that you can use to storytell. I think you can do something very similar on Instagram. You can do similar things on Twitter as well. But any platform that you choose, the bottom line is that speak to what people are feeling and going through, because then you make the connection.
I've seen, everything you said, and it. Thank you for so much for sharing that with us and being vulnerable. That's a gift that you give to your audience, and I think it's a gift that all content creators give to their audience, whether it's a laugh that people need, or a need to ability to cry or express the vulnerability to share. Like you said, they don't have the ability or the words necessarily to say it. They don't have the freedom for whatever reason, but you sharing it and using your platform to express it gives them a freedom, gives them that cathartic, because everybody needs it, whether it's a piece of music or an Instagram post or whatever it is. Give people the ability to get that feeling out of themselves, get it out. That's festering. I don't know. I'm not being articulate because I'm also emotional, but thank you for sharing.
We're having it's an emotional year. It's okay.
It is. It really is. It's hard. And like you said, it's so hard not to also just look at everything that's so big and huge and not go feel that what you're doing doesn't mean anything. It's hard. It's really, really hard not to. But I will speak and say that I've seen content creators and the work that you guys do valued more than ever this year, because it's been one of the only ways that people have been able to experience fresh content and people reflecting back to them what their lives are like in this really dark time. So yeah, don't ever feel like what you do doesn't matter if you can help it, because it does. It matters. Let's talk about email marketing before I start crying again. We talked about email marketing a little bit this summer, and I would love to talk more about it. What role does story selling play in your email marketing? And give us your top email marketing tool or tip, because I think anyone who has any experience in selling or sales or affiliate know that email marketing is gold in terms of conversions and actually building those super fan relationships. So please share something there.
Yeah. So yes, absolutely. Email is powerful. We already know that. And one of the more reasons why is because, you know, a social media platform can be pulled out from under you at any point. But if you have your email list, then that's a way for you to keep in touch with at least a section of your audience, right? So I do think it's important to build one, and I do think it's important to communicate with them regularly. Now, that could be different for a lot of people. I do recommend at least once a week. I think once a week is a good place to be. If you can do at least once a week, that works. There are times when I fall off the wagon and I'll email like, you know, once in 2 weeks or maybe twice a month. But the point is to keep the conversation going. And the way you do that is, again, by telling these stories. Always the emails where I'm giving a story or speaking to.
Can I just say that everything you say is so freaking like mind-opening and eye-opening to me.
Oh, really?
Honestly, when I think about email, it never would have occurred to me to think, keep the conversation going, because we look at it as a way that we're like talking at somebody, and looking at it as a conversation is a totally different way of looking at email. Sorry, what you were saying.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to. I really do see it as a conversational tool. Yes, it's a powerful tool for you to send your blog posts and your YouTube videos and all that, and I do that too. But I think it's also a powerful way to just talk to people, and I will usually invite people to reply to me. Sometimes people reply, sometimes they don't. I gave the invitation though. So, but when I do get replies, it's very impactful. I've had replies from a 16-year-old. There was a 16-year-old that was signed up to my email list, and she was like,
"That's awesome."
Yeah, it was something crazy. But she told me, yeah, I want to start a business, but I feel like I don't know if you're the right person to tell this, but I feel like I'm not very nice to my mom, and I just need somebody who can help me with that. And I was like, I don't know why she thought I was the person to speak to. But I think I just,
guess, but
you know,
now, and I figure probably that's why they want to talk to you. But yes,
yeah. But I just said I gave her some advice. I just wrote something like, hey, I'm pretty sure your mom is just trying her best, and just try to see things from her perspective and do your best at school. Something very grown up. And so and then she wrote back and said, oh my God, thank you so much for responding, and thank you so much, that helped. I'm going to do exactly that. And I'm like, what? It's like, what just happened? So there are people on your email list that will follow you just because they feel like when your email hits their inbox, they're just getting a letter from one of their friends, right? And because you're keeping that conversation going, and they're interested in what you have to offer, when you do offer it, they're most likely going to get it because they do need it, but they also enjoy your companionship, right? So I do see email as so it has to be frequent. A friend that hasn't talked to you in 2 years is different from a friend that talks to you every day, right? They're two different relationships. So keep it regular. I would say also that there's been some arguments, and I've read different sides of this, of whether your emails need to be long or short. Yep. And I think it's a mix. Okay. because you will meet, you have different people on your list. There's some people that need to see three bullet points and then they're good. And there are people that want to read and read and read. But what I find is that if the email is too long, people usually skip, don't read the whole thing. So I try to be somewhere in the middle where I do have emails that are super short and I'm like, go watch my YouTube video. Then I have emails where I'm telling a story, right? And usually I'll start out by saying, hey, you're going to need some tea for this. You're going to need a drink for this. So go and grab your favorite juice and then come and listen to what we have to say, right? And then we kind of make it, again, make it conversational. That's another tip that I have. So regularity, right? So keep the conversation going at least once a week, send something out. Short or long is up to you, but I think somewhere in between works. And then the last tip is do collect emails. The only way you're going to have an email list is to collect emails. And sometimes I'll go to people's websites and like, oh, you don't have any kind of offer to, So if you don't have that, and I know most bloggers at this point, Mediavine bloggers are so smart.
God, how many that I've met that say I have emails, but I don't do anything with them.
Right. So if you have, so build it, but to that, right? I love that you brought that up. I have emails, but I don't do anything. There are a few ways to go around it. You can start emailing them. A lot of people are going to unsubscribe because you haven't emailed them in a long time and they've forgotten who you are. So that's going to be fine. But the reality of the matter is that even though they sign up for your email, there are also people that kind of cross-pollinate. So they do follow you sometimes on one of your social media platforms as well as your email list. So they still get to see, they get some interaction from you. But what's worse is if you don't email, you don't update your social media, and you don't update your blog. Okay, then that one, what are you doing? So that's where it becomes a tough one. But I think that because some people may be so connected with you on social media, when you send those emails, those people will still stay on your email list, and the people that want to sign, like, who is this, will just unsubscribe, and that's fine. But once you do that, then you just keep going. A little trick I used to use, I don't do it as much anymore because I just don't have the time, is actually um I'm just reading Michelle's comment, but
Yeah,
actually
hey, Michelle.
yeah, but is actually, I learned this from another bigger blogger a long time ago. But to set the way you know how you set time aside to write your blog posts. So at the beginning of the month, let's say you're going to send out an email a week, pre-write your emails, right? So if you know that you're going to release some video content, some blog content, whatever, just pre-write the emails and then have them ready. So then every week you can just push send. You can just maybe add a link or change something and push send on that email because you would have already created it at the beginning of the month. And this becomes really useful for when of course, when you're going to launch anything. You should be doing that way in advance. But when you're going to launch anything, if you're doing affiliate marketing, if you're trying to get people to come read a blog post, go listen to the podcast, that becomes really relevant. That becomes really helpful in being consistent and not having so many unsubscribes. And Michelle says they are going to unsubscribe and complain about this. Yeah.
But if you aren't,
and this even happens when you email regularly, by the way.
Oh, really?
Sometimes, yeah.
I mean, but the thing is, like Michelle said, I've heard people say, well, but my email list is, as I lost 300 people. But did you have them if you weren't emailing them? And then when you email them, they don't want to be on your list anymore. I don't feel like you have them. Plus, it's more expensive. So if they're not your people, then they're not your people. And that's okay.
They're not your people.
Mm-hmm. They're not your super fans. You're not building a super fandom. And yeah, I think that's important. All right. We're almost done. We're almost out of time, which is heartbreaking. I want your top takeaway for our audience so they can start right now in Q4, 3 weeks before Black Friday. Are we 3 weeks? I don't even know. 4 weeks? I don't know what is time. But Black Friday is this month. I do know that. And Cyber Monday is this month. So if you can give us top tips on implementing story selling now, I'm going to make a quick announcement and then we'll come back to you real quick. Guys, our next episode of Teal Talk is in 2 weeks. It is Thursday, November 19th. We are, at this point, going to be talking to Mediavine's own Danielle Spiesman, Influencer Marketing Associate, and Steffi Predmore, Director of Influencer Marketing. It is going to be everything you ever wanted to know about working with brands, but we're afraid to ask. We're going to talk about stuff from what brand reps will be looking for in 2021 to items that you absolutely must negotiate in your scope of work. So don't miss that. Also, if you are watching and whether you're live or on the replay, please subscribe to the Mediavine YouTube channel and like our Facebook page so you won't have to miss another episode of Teal Talk with amazing guests like my wonderful one today, G Nonterah. G, tell us that where we can get in touch with you and also give us that top tip, if you don't mind.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much again for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Making my week.
So you can find me on gnonterah.com. That's my website. These days I mostly produce content on YouTube because #mom life, and so I don't have quiet to write as much. But I do YouTube videos. So I think my YouTube channel the link was shared in here. Thank you for sharing that. I'm also very active on Instagram. So at Nonterah, it's just my name. So I'd love to connect with you there. Come say hi. I think my biggest tip, as far as story selling goes, is I was sorting through all the tips in my head, but I think one would be to start getting ready for 2021, right? You can begin to start talking to your audience now. So a super easy thing you can do today is wherever your audience hangs out, wherever you hang out the most, I want you to put out a announcement and say, hey, I'd love to chat with 5 of you on Zoom in the next week. Here's my Calendly schedule. Schedule 15 minutes with me, and I'd love to talk to you, because I really love for you to be able to talk to the people behind the screen who are encountering you and find out, why are they reading your blog? Why are they following you on social media? What are some of their fears? Like, where are they in life? Who are they? And talk to, if even if you can, all you can do for the rest of the year is talk to 5 of such people. I think that you'll be way ahead in your story selling game, because you will begin to tell stories that matter to those people. Because if there's one like them, there's about 100 or 1,000 like them, and you'll be able to speak their specific language and get even better at selling.
Nonterah, you are, as always, an inspiration. Thank you for sharing your tips, and thank you for sharing your heart. We're so glad to have you again. And everybody else, please be well, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. Bye now.
All right. Bye. Thank you.